today with being Halloween. I feel like by the time Halloween actually comes, everyone's sick of Halloween. We already have celebrated enough. So hi y'all, good to see you. I know some of you have been to a number of concentration panels, which is awesome. My name is Mallory Stoffel. I oversee the Career Readiness Center, which is right next door here in the Biz Lab. We help students with everything to help transition from college to career. So internship search, concentration exploration, interview prep, resume writing, all those things. And so one of the things we do are these concentration panels. This is our last one of the quarter. So and honestly, that's for last. We love quant, and I'm excited to talk about it. So for those of you that are first time freshmen, you have until next May, so May 2025 of your second year to declare. For those of you that are second years or first year transfer students, you know, some of those here too, you have until May 2024 to declare your concentration. So we'll talk about what you can do beyond attending concentration and all of the next steps. But let's go ahead and dive in and hear from our amazing panelists that are here today. Thank you for taking the time out of your day. So let's dive in with just quick intros. For those of you that haven't, maybe if this is your first concentration panel, you're not sure how this works, I have some questions for the panelists, but it's always much more fun if you ask questions as you go. We want to make sure that all of the things that you want to know about the concentration are answered by the time today. Okay, so we could also make this just a nice conversation. So let's start right here. Let's do name, obviously your major and concentration, and then if you are involved anywhere on campus.
I'm Prodigy. I'm a third year business major with a concentration in quant. And then I'm also minoring in statistics, which like really overlaps. And then on campus, I'm currently just involved in Pi Omega, and then I'm also in modeling.
Oh, fun.
Hello, my name is Nick. I'm also doing quant, like all of us. I'm minored in stats as well, as that's a common pathway most quant students take, just because it's so attainable to do both at the same time.
Are you business or econ?
Business. I'm also minoring in computer science, so if you want to talk to me about that, there's also ways to implement that into the quant coursework pretty seamlessly. Let's see. I'm in the Quantitative Analysis Club with Brett on campus. I'm the president, and I work as a stat tutor as well for Stat 252.
Hi guys, my name is Bailey. I'm a fourth year business major, minor in statistics. I'm part of Quantitative Mega, the national party here on campus. I'm also part of the Chinese Lion Dance team, and I also work with a couple of local faculty studying polytherapy.
I'm Brett. I'm a fourth year business major, quantitative analysis, concentration. I have a stats minor as well as a natural science minor. On campus, as Nick said, I'm involved with the Quantitative Analysis Club. I'm the director of product for workshops and development, so getting in professors to give workshops. I also worked at the Security Operations Center here on campus. And
Awesome. Okay, so first question for the panel is, can you describe quant to someone who maybe knows nothing about the concentration? How would you share the focus of the concentration? Anyone can start. You want to start with?
I feel like it's very it's a combination of statistics with like business and strategy. We do like a lot of problem solving. There's a lot of the courses I've taken so far are mainly like statistics and econ classes where we do like data modeling, data visualization, like cleaning and like working with large databases. And then I've also done like, I'm planning on taking Vin 393, which is like databases, and that's like SQL, writing queries.
So how I would describe it is it can really be different for anyone, because you can go down that math route of all the math electives, which I think we'll show the classes later. So you can go down the math route, or you can go down the stat route, or you can go down the analytics route. There's overlap within all of them, but there's definitely a lot of different ways you can take it. So quantitative analysis for one student is not going to be the same as quantitative analysis for another, just because there's so much variation in the electives. That being said, the two required classes, advanced econometrics and So I don't want to skip ahead.
That's fine, yeah, we get it.
But yeah, it helps me remember what we take. So
Yeah,
the two required classes, which are advanced econometrics and stat computing with R, those are basically both stat classes. Don't let the econ title fool you in econometrics. You're not going to be doing much econ. It's all R and stats and data analysis. So what I'd recommend is if you want to do quant, you definitely have to have an inclination towards statistics to some degree, just because pretty much all the classes rely on some level on stats. So that being said, if you like stats, like I'm sure most of us do on the panel, it's a really good concentration to combine that stats with a little bit of computing and programming and business. You kind of get that trifecta. That's how I describe it.
Yeah, I agree with those two. Basically, it's kind of a choose your own major sort of deal. Like if you want to go the stats route, analytics, math, or sort of more economics, and do all that. Like it kind of depends where you also want to see yourself in the future post grad. Like if you want to go into actuarial science, or if you want to be more of a quantitative economics, or if you want to go into more data science. You kind of choose the classes yourself. And I think for me personally, I'm trying to go into more data science route, more static analytics classes. So yeah, it's what you make of it really.
I think you guys said everything about it.
are there any misconceptions about quant?
Yeah, I feel like people think it's like very math heavy, but you don't, like, that's just like a route you can take. I feel like my stats classes, I do more like conceptual stuff than that hardcore math, which is.
Yeah, like you don't actually, I think sometimes students think you have to take a certain number of units in each of these three categories, but you don't. You can pick just one category, you can mix and match, so you don't have to stick to one area. But like, if you're like, I don't want to ever take calculus again, I did Calc 1 in high school or whatever, then you don't need to take anything from the mathematical foundation.
Like I've never taken it out.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've only done Calc 1, so it's quantitative analysis, but you can definitely stick to that more stat, econ, analytics side, which doesn't involve calculus.
I think another, not so much misconception about quant, but another misconception about, I talk to so many students that want to go into analytics, and IS does have, now they're starting to have a little bit of that focus. But if you know that you're most drawn to go into, you want to work with data, you want to go into analytics, quant is your concentration. All right, IS will get you there, but you're going to study a lot of other things that aren't really relevant at all to data analytics. And so a lot of times I hear students say, I wanted to go into data, I'm going to do IS. And so I think that this is really, I feel, the spot to gain the necessary technical skills that you need to go into data analytics. Quant is where it's at. Okay. Let's dive into classes. Well, actually, before we do this, let's talk about what are some, like, how did you know this was the right concentration for you? Whether things you tried on, did you already just know? Did it align with your career goals? Like, what were some, how do you know it's a good fit?
Well, like, I always knew I wanted to go to analytics. And then I also came to this panel freshman year and I like heard from everyone and their experiences with like internships and classes really aligning with what I wanted to do and what I was looking into. And then I also sat up with like people on LinkedIn. I would just literally dry message them or cold call and ask if I could talk to different people. So I talked to this user insights person at Spotify, and then I talked to someone at Activision Blizzard who was doing like marketing and strategy. And just hearing from all these people and like what they do with their jobs and their majors kind of helped me gravitate towards this combination.
Yeah, so for me, there was a few reasons. So I took my stat classes, the 251, 252 that we all take, and I liked those classes and I wanted to keep going further with it. So originally I was like, oh, I want to do a stats minor. And then I was like, oh, I want to do maybe like IS or finance. Those were like what I was thinking at first. I looked more into IS, realized you don't really learn as many like hard coding or technical skills as you will get exposed to in quant. You learn very applicable database skills in IS. It's still a great concentration for that. But if your goal is to learn how to program or learn these like harder skills in like R or Python, you're not going to get the same R or Python experience as you do in IS. So that's what persuaded me to quant over IS. And then I preferred quant over finance just because I wanted to get more exposure to, I guess, the stat classes and the CS classes, and it was just gonna be way too hard for me to balance doing both finance and those outside classes at once. So quant was great for me because it allowed me to take some of those CS and stat classes as my major classes, instead of taking those classes outside and on top of the classes I was already taking as a business major. And also I'll add, all of the stat and math classes and stuff that you take in quant, it looks really good on grad school applications because they look for having those foundational skills in analysis and calc. So if you do quant and take some of those classes, you're gonna be, you're maybe gonna have more options for grad school in terms of technical roles than you would compared to a typical business student. So there's a lot of pluses there.
The CS minor has so many, like it has the same number of units as any other minor, but it's all the prereqs that make it a huge minor to add on. So you really do have to be strategic if there's any transfers in the room. You need to be really intentional if you do want to be a CS minor.
Yeah, and you can also take CS 101 as a quant class just to try it out. So if you take 101 and you like it, good, you already got one of the minor classes out of the way. If you take 101 and you don't like it, at least you're through it and it counts towards your major and not just going into nothing.
I kind of have a whole journey kind of finding my niche in quantitative analysis and stats. I used to be IS and sales, and I went to IS and stats, and I was like, okay, let's do quantitative analysis and stats. So I'm settled on this. So I think the three things that kind of like drove me to this path was the first one being in stat 251, 252 with I think Professor Williams. He really advocated for R in his classes, and I think that kind of like started my journey early with R in statistical analysis programming. And he kind of pretty much inspired me to go more into stat analytics route because I really enjoyed this sort of analysis we were doing with ANOVA and kind of 242. So I think that was one. And then another reason was shout out to Career Student Services for getting me two mentors. I have a mentor in analytics with what's it called, the New York Times, and another mentor who's a Google database engineer. So I talked to both of them. I think, yeah, I remember them. So I kind of talking for 3 months, kind of getting a feel of what their roles were and seeing how they reflected on their college path, because I think something they regretted was not doing more stats courses since they were both IS. And I think that kind of drove me more to pursue more quant analysis role. And I think the third reason was last fall, actually, I stopped by the MSBA program info session. And they talk more about using a lot of econometrics, AI, machine learning, stats courses in their curriculum. So I think taking quantitative analysis would really set me up well for the MSBA if I choose to do that.
So I've always been like a math related person, just love math. And so initially I was finance concentration. And so the classes went well, but like to go to that job search, that's like not really my, or finance is more like the extroverted personality, and I'm more of an introvert. So then, and I found quant, and we can still work with math, work with data, but it was more appealing to me and who I am, and also like finding a job here for that.
I love that you all have such different reasons for arriving in the same place, right? So there's a ton of great reasons to just decide on a certain concentration. Okay, talk about classes.
Sure.
Where do you want to begin? You want to talk about just like any notable classes or class projects, or if you have questions about curriculum, sometimes it's easier just to like have a discussion about it. So tell us a little bit about maybe where you've chosen to focus and any particular classes that you felt like you gained a really important technical skill or you had a really impactful experience.
I can start and just point something out that's kind of interesting if you guys want. Can I stand up?
Yeah, please
Okay.
do.
So pretty much, right, so here's the quant electives. This class is in the stat minor, and 323, 324, and 330 are in the stat minor, right? So if you do your quant concentration and you chose to choose these 3 classes as your electives, you would get a stat minor as a byproduct without taking any outside classes.
That all 4 of you have stat minors.
Yeah, so this is kind of why you'll see a lot of quant students having the stat minor, is because you can just take any of these stat classes. I think all of these count for the stat minor, but these 400 levels have math prereqs I couldn't get into. But you can literally take these stat classes, and since you gotta take stat with R2, that also counts for it. And just get a stat minor as a byproduct. So it's kind of cool. It makes it easier to add on a minor and just give you more of those analytical skills. And also it's just another thing to slap on your resume. You know, now you have a minor in stats and you didn't even have to take extra classes.
That'll help with like resume keyword searches and the job hunt. Having that stats minor really does trigger like that. You have those relevant skills.
And a lot of like cool positions I've seen in internships, they like as a rec, they don't put business, but they'll put like statistics or analytics, and those are all like small classes that get you there. Which is like something that really helps.
Yeah. Any other classes? Where are you all focusing?
I'm like on the left side, so I've done stat 323 and 324. I'm gonna do 330 next quarter. And then I've taken 331. And then I'm currently taking Econ 339, which is a prerequisite 440. And then I've done also CPE.
Yeah, so also what it doesn't say up there is if you're econ, you need to do a different class other than econometrics for your for one of your electives. But if you're a business student, you take econometrics before you take advanced econometrics. And also, so it says there's only 2 required classes, but really to get into advanced econometrics, you need to do Econ 339.
Yeah.
So there's kind of more so like 3 required classes if you're a business student.
Yeah.
If you're econ, you would have already taken econometrics and you pick something else.
Mhm.
But I've done 101, 339, 324, doing 330 and 440 next quarter. So yeah, I'm definitely staying on the left side. I don't really mess with calculus. Oh yeah, and you gotta take either 392 or 101 to get into stat 331. So yeah, you can either take the IS class or the CS class to get that prereq for R.
I feel like we're good at throwing out class names and stuff, like what kinds of things are you doing, or what questions do you all have about the coursework? Yeah.
What like career pathway are you gonna take after finding these courses, or like after taking these courses? Yeah, because you kind of work on similar, but like different paths. It seems like both of you especially. Yeah, that's the way you're gonna go into.
Do you mind if we save that question? We'll dive into that next, actually, which is perfect. Yeah.
You guys kind of touched on this earlier, but can you kind of explain what R is?
R is it's kind of like Python SQL. It's like a programming language, and I don't know if you're also here, but currently I'm been applying to jobs and more like data analytics roles, data science, actuarial science, anything like that. Anything with data requires you to be like proficient in some sort of language, and R is a pretty big one. And I mean, stat 331 works with R, econometrics 339, and advanced econometrics, they all work with R. So something that didn't really work out for me, but I suggest for you guys, is definitely take stat 331 first. It didn't work out with my schedule, but I took 339 first, then 440, and then third stat 331. And for me, I was like struggling because like the content was half fine, but then the professors kind of expect you to know R already. So it's like I was more like just trying to learn R rather than focusing on the content. So that's a big thing. But if you do that, if you take that, it matters like class wise, but if you can do that, then you're in like a really good position for a good foundation. And then you'll have like 2 years of experience before you even like apply for jobs.
Yeah, I think so. Right. Basically R is kind of like the basis for all of auditing classes, I feel like. And it's kind of like software basically to analyze data. So you can with exact data set, kind of free data set and analyze it. That's like the simplified version of it. But yeah, definitely like I just learned that, and you think R you love it. I think that like that 330 because like almost basically the same thing, little older software, but definitely transferable to what's there. It's often other software used in like extremely industry.
I think for me, taking 252, that includes that 324, helped me understand what R was. because I was confused. It's like very different. I took CPE 101 first, and that was like very quant sci and like writing if statements, writing loops, and I was like scared because I thought like I was gonna be like that, but I feel like ours is a lot simpler. It's really good for like data visualization or like creating models when you have like fast chunky data sets and you want to see relationships between variables. R is like the easiest way to set up models that are gonna like help you understand what those relationships are, help you understand like the, I guess, like statistics behind the relationships of different variables and data.
Okay. I'm glad you asked that question because I think it's easy to forget as panelists, right? Like you didn't know what R was when you were first year and but you get so much exposure in the classroom that then it becomes like kind of years of confidence. Any other curriculum questions? Yes.
So I don't know your name on the left.
Right.
You said you're a math oriented person, right? So I imagine you're taking a lot of classes on the right.
Yeah, so I took a combination, so I took AP Calc and AP Stat at school, then I took Calc 3. Yeah, Calc 3, linear analysis on that side, and then here I took Sci 101, I'm taking Stat 324 now, then I finished these two already.
How are you finding those classes on the right? Are they like hard or?
Those, they were difficult for me, but I think that's because I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I didn't take any math classes my freshman or sophomore year. Then I took I took Calc 3, and then I still didn't know what I wanted to do. Didn't do anything for 2 quarters, and then took our linear analysis. So I think if I took them all like right away, right after each other, I would have been fine. It was more like I was relearning stuff before, and then also like the current side.
Yeah, I'm in a similar position. I took Calc 1 and 2 in high school,
Yeah.
but I'm not taking.
What year are you?
I'm a first year.
Oh, so I think now then would be the perfect time if you do want to do it, just because it's.
So I took Calc 3 this year sometime this year.
What I find with quant too, and I don't know if you have experienced this, is I do find that because it's so broad, it can be helpful to save some of those electives because you might find like by the end of your second year or the end of your first year as a transfer, if you have a little bit of that career focus, because so many of these classes like will directly apply, like obviously, there's an opportunity to take computer applications in finance. So if you want to apply your data, savviness into the world of finance, you could focus in that way. And so there's just so much opportunity to focus in on different areas depending on what your career path is. And so sometimes it can be helpful to wait a little bit, being really mindful of the prereqs thing and the sequencing of quant, because that's Brett, do you mind sharing a little bit about what actuarial science is? I don't know if any people know.
It's like, so I guess we'll get into it later, but
Yeah.
This past summer I worked at an internship I did product development, but it was at an insurance company. And at insurance companies, they have actuaries, so they basically risk analysis. And so they use software like R, and they do a lot of modeling and prediction, basically like time of death until someone, and they calculate like how much like your premium will be like each month when you retire.
Oh, you smoke and ride a skateboard? Ooh, you're gonna.
Yeah, so like they use all these variables about like age, gender, all these things, all these variables that you learn in classes, and they take that and they create models. And also like, so I didn't figure out the actual science minor until like a couple weeks ago, and that's because I found out that I completed all the prereqs for it. Basically, as a business major, you can do all of them besides 2 classes, and those 2 classes are between 2 classes and for stat.
Okay. And do you find that taking some classes on the math side feels relevant to what you want to do, or do you think that, I don't know?
I think that's more so if you do want to go to the actual, like if you want to be an actuary, because you take like 8 tests throughout your career, and some are math related, some are analytics related. So that depends like more about the career you want to pursue.
Yeah.
you wanna like pursue being an actuary and take all the tests right now? Cause I was looking into it for a while, but I was looking through like the minor you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I got the business student, you only really need to take like 3 extra classes to complete it, which is pretty easy.
Yeah.
And then, but you look in like the other section, it talk about what classes apply to each test. And it'd be like, for me at least, I would have to like go back and do all the calcs and do all that. And end up being like 10 extra classes, so.
So you don't, I think those classes will be helpful for you for the tests, but they're not required, so there are like, so about actuaries, it's like 7 or 8 different tests. And each test, or for each hour of the test, like, it's suggested to study 100 hours for each one, so if it's a 3-hour test, it's just take to study for 300 hours for it. But I mean, the cool thing about actuaries is, basically, before you want to become an actuary, they suggest you take 2 of like the 8 tests before, and that'll help you like if you take an internship with an actuaries. And basically, each test you pass is like a pay jump. It's a pay raise. So rather than other job or fields where it's kind of like the more you work, like more, or like then if you work like 2 or 3 years, then maybe you'll get a pay raise. This is like you pass a test and it's automatic pay jump pretty much. So after you pass like those 7 or 8 tests, which will you do for like 7 or 8 years out of college, then you can be making 2, 3.
And you can then be strategic, if you do choose quant, then you could be strategic to take some of those classes that are off. I didn't see that word. I do think most students that have career goals to become an actuary tend to be like stats or math majors, so you have to be really strategic. Thank you. Okay, so we've kind of veered in there, and you asked the question too. So let's talk a little bit about. Oh, you want to do senior project real quick? Talk about classes. And let's talk about your senior project. What do you? Any of you know what you're going to do for 4 years? Have you already done it?
I'm actually going to my next quarter, and I'm trying to ask the marketing professor right now if he's willing to take a quant student, because I looked at one of the finance project, but I don't think I exactly met my sort of background of the finance professor was looking for, so I'm trying to find something else like marketing or potentially I think accounting. So that's kind of my journey right now.
I'm gonna do or 2 things, either an actual science project or a certification in Tableau, which is like a data visualization tool that is also like really helpful.
That's what I'm looking at doing with them.
Nice. Yes. Okay, any questions on your project? Basically, use it to your advantage. You could use that as an excuse to get any sort of technical skill that will help you in your job search. Yeah. Okay, or build an app casually. Okay, you're probably like computer science focused. Okay, so we'll come back to class. So let's talk about entry-level jobs. So maybe if you could speak to your career path, some internship experiences that were helpful in you narrowing that path. And if you don't know, that's okay, but kind of the career, and then if you want to share a little bit about where you see some of the career buckets that quant students go into.
I think there were 2 internships of mine that really solidified it for me. The first, I worked at a startup called Reach, which is like a trucking company. So basically they connect trucking companies to service providers. And it's like Uber, so if you're like truck breaks down in the middle of the road, you can like use this app to find the service provider that's most convenient and most connected to bring it, which is super cool. And since it was like a very new concept, I did competitor analytics for them. And a lot of that was just researching and making strategic maps. So they gave me a list of like competitors that they were really looking at. And I went through those competitors' websites, the competitors' business models, and then I would compare it to Reach's business model, because this like the VP of strategy is giving me the core business model, and I had a strategic map kind of showing what the competitors' company was doing well that Reach could integrate, and then what Reach was doing that the competitor wasn't doing. That was like setting them apart from the competition and kind of giving them that that leverage. And then that was super cool because I did both like researching and then a lot of like visualizing my data and like visualizing that research. And then I had to present it and like making that presentation, you learn so many, like you're able to apply so many quant skills and learn just like how to take like a lot of messy data and make it concise and put into presentable format. And then last summer I interned at Activision Blizzard, like the gaming company that does like Candy Crush and stuff, and I was a business strategy analyst. So for that, I worked with both the strategy team and the analytics team, and I did a couple of projects. So some of my projects were just like researching and like going through websites and just collecting a lot of like qualitative data and putting it on like Excel and like mapping it out. But then a cool project that I did get to do that touched on my Excel skills and my SQL skills, where I was given their like A/B test data and their revenue data, and I had to find a way to restructure it and show updates of how like different A/B tests performed within a week, and then how they performed through the lifetime of their A/B test, and then like whether the revenue increased or decreased, and then I sent it to like higher ups. And I think that was really cool because I used a lot of like querying, VLOOKUP, but then I also got to like play around with Excel, like pivot tables, which you end up doing, I think, in one of my accounting classes. Like we work on pivot tables, so I got to like use those skills, which is
I can comment really quick because those examples are exactly why someone would hire a quant concentration over a stats major. I think that's one thing I hear from students is like, how are you competitive for these data science is like usually required advanced degrees, but like data analyst roles compared to a stats major. So you're not only looking at the data and interpreting the data, but then you're able to present it and how that strategically impacts business decisions, right? And so that is the angle that business and econ students bring to the table when they choose quant going into these analyst level roles. So thank you for sharing that example because I think that's like a big question for students is.
I think, yeah, I was like
Yeah.
able to use skills from like my accounting and finance class,
Yeah.
like terms I knew there
Yeah.
to help them draw conclusions. And I think that's so important. Also, making PowerPoints and like presenting data, you have it in class and it feels so tedious. But when I was like in those positions and in those roles, I realized how important it was because a lot of like comp sci people, they struggle making those presentations, even like the business teams make it for them. So having the skills where I was able to like cater to both teams was super, I think, helpful.
So where does that leave you wanting to go career path wise?
I really want to continue going into like strategy. I want to go more into user analytics and user insights. So whether that's like doing research and like actually conducting the study, because I took Stat 323, which is like design and analysis experiments. So you'll learn how to set up a lot of experiments based on different questions that would have. And then I want to be able to like use that data to like help out, like make decisions, answer big questions, like tech companies. Hopefully Spotify one day. That would be cool.
So I did an internship as a data analyst, and pretty much any role with the word analyst in it is gonna be like some type of target role for quant, because one thing that happened that was kind of funny to me is like this guy hit me up on LinkedIn, and like some people will just see the word quantitative analysis and will be like, whoa, like this person is like super qualified or super fit to be an analyst, just because the name does carry some value. You see that as your concentration. But yeah, I did it this summer as remote. It was for a smaller company than what you were talking about, so I didn't have like the same experience, but mine was more so just like developing KPIs and finding different like financial metrics of an online like e-learning business. And so I was basically looking at the efficacy of their different return on ad spends based on whether or not their ads on YouTube or Google or TikTok or Facebook. So pretty much just assess where the ads are performing best, but answering that question not through, oh, what responses we're getting, but more so, what if the data is telling us? Which ones are having the highest returns? What I'd say too is that going back to what you're saying about the difference between a quant and a stats major, just having that general idea of like what a return on ad spend is, or return on investment, or return on equity. All of these things are terms that you probably all heard in your accounting and finance stuff. That's where you're gonna be kind of that bridge between the technical and also the business language, because you gotta know how to speak the business language, but you also gotta know how to do the analysis. That's where Quant kind of wants it to.
Yeah, so I did my internship at the Facilities District, and I'm also currently working with the Facilities Clinic. So I guess first off, at Sac Facilities District, I was working as part of the budget planning performance team. Apparently the manager talked to me and she wanted me specifically because at that time I was more IS, so I was more technical focused compared to other finance students. So she wanted someone who was more technically technically savvy. So that's why she kind of like chose someone like me with a more IS background, but now I'm in quant. So I think that's something to consider when you're trying to be competitive in the job search. And in my role as a budget planning performance intern, I kind of help build dashboards like with revenues and trying to see if they were meeting their goals with like hires and also like profits and kind of the margins. So that was pretty interesting, and kind of working with SAP to kind of extract data from there. I think that was my first time using a software as like big as that. So that was really interesting working with them at the Facilities District. And currently on campus, I'm with the Taxpayers Clinic, so with the LITC, I'm kind of managing their database. They used to be using Microsoft Access when I first joined, but we transitioned more to Excel because it kind of helped with data extraction for our annual grant report to get money from the IRS. So that's kind of something I'm doing.
Yeah, so like this past summer I probably applied to like over 100 internships. And it's like, it is pretty competitive because you're calling quant, but like comp sci or stats, that's not the competition. But then for the ones that was able to get interviews for, like I just say quant, and like half the time the recruiter's like, oh wow, like they probably think like quantitative traders from like Ivy Leagues, but like people that are leaving, like my friends' parents that go here quant, and they're immediately like, oh wow, that's so impressive, even though it's like not doing anything more than like other concentrations, but it's like that kind of gets you in the door. And then so I did product development at the insurance company. So I did similar to Pre. I did a lot of like market research, competitor research, and then created databases with our competitors' models and our model, and then trying to figure out like areas that we can differentiate ourselves. And then also like just other visualizations, like our tools, like calculating stuff.
One of the things that you might have noticed is that, so two y'all you were working in like where marketing students, I think, often also are like targeting. And so, one thing that's really interesting about quant is when you think of the job function of data analysts, there's gonna be analysts in the human resources department, analysts in the marketing department, analysts in product and STEM. There's gonna be like, literally, there's analysts in every area, there's analysts in the finance spaces. And so, it just depends on like the type of data that you're really interested in looking for and working with. And so I think of some alumni that were quant. One now, I'm sure you know, Sam, is at Bain doing management consulting. Another is a PhD student doing public health research. Another is doing analyst work, but in the DEI space. So under like the HR umbrella. So there's just so many different avenues where you're really just applying that skill set they need that skill set in every business function, essentially. So you'll see that can be really hard when you're applying for internships because you need some sort of focus to be able to really differentiate yourself, but then also not be overwhelmed with like applying for the hundreds of internships that you would be qualified for with your skill set. Does that make sense? Okay. Any questions about career buckets? Like pathways?
Just in general,
Yeah.
Mallory, do you feel like it's kind of difficult right now to find internships for quant, just with the way the economy is right now? Job security, I'm just like, that's one thing that's been like really much back.
Yes.
Yeah, honestly, it's hard right now, but it's not just for quant. I mean, I talked to finance students left and right for switching to internships. I think it's important to normalize, number one, that you will apply for a lot of internships. Knowing where do you can work smarter, not harder. So who's on campus, who's recruiting, where do we have a lot of alumni? Being really strategic with networking, leveraging your network, and also being really intentional and cold message people on LinkedIn, sign up for mentoring programs where we connect you with people. Those are the things that'll help differentiate you. But yeah, it's brutal. And if you think about a company that's trying to cut back on resources, what often gets cut? Intern programs, like, so that's what we've seen a lot since 2020. So totally it's happening, but it's also not impossible. We have a number of quant students that go into risk and assurance at the Big Four. So that's always a pipeline that we have really established. Yes.
Something that I think really, like you said, leveraging your network. I,
Yeah.
like Brett, applied to so many, like freshman year and sophomore year, and none of those ended up working with the way I got those internships. Or through emailing people that I knew, or like I would email my parents' friends, I'd email my friends' parents, I would like go on LinkedIn and find people that had like 2+ or 3+, and then find their email and then message them and be like, hey, I really like your role, I'm super interested, like, can I set up a 15-minute chat with you? And then a lot of times through that, I'd be like, do you have any roles? And a lot of times they were like, no, we don't, but here's someone that might, like, we're gonna connect you here. And then that's how I ended up, like, last year I met someone that worked at Blizzard as the VP of strategy, and he was like, wait, this is so cool. And then I got it like that, or like freshman year, it was really hard, but it was a startup, and it was because it was like my dad's friend's friend. And I like emailed him, and I was like, just shoot your shot. Like,
Yeah.
people are gonna say no, but just shooting your shot and like emailing, literally like asking, because people want us to succeed. Like, people like that college kids are like people our age are so driven. And I think seeing that, they're more willing and like more inclined to help you out.
What's like what would this turn into in like 15, 20 years down the road? Like, what kind of position are you working then? Like, you go into management more, or like I don't know what.
Yeah. What about fixing those first college?
Probably, probably management, maybe like you director.
Yeah, and if you end up getting more technical skills, you can go more into that data sciencey role if you get more of an advanced degree or more technical computing math skills. And there's such a high ceiling for data science. And also the roles, good question, for however many years out in the future, they probably don't even exist yet
Yeah.
realistically, because the whole data analysis and quant kind of field is, I think I saw somewhere, it's expected to grow like 36% in the next decade, which is like around like 6 or 7 times the average job in the US. So this market is growing really, really fast, and management and just higher up positions are gonna start evolving and being more common. Some that I've seen already is like there's chief data officer and also chief technology officer. So if you're quant, you're gonna have that business language, those people facing skills from the business side, but you're also gonna have the tech and data skills. So I'm not really sure. I haven't met any CTOs or CEOs, but you could be a good candidate for those roles if you have that combination of both the skill sets.
And when you think about career trajectory, right, you either are growing in breadth. So you're gaining more, you're overseeing more teams, you're growing in the scope of your work, or you're gaining career depth, which is specializing in something super niche or becoming the expert on the team in machine learning, like those types of things, right? So you kind of have that choice to decide, do I really want to narrow in? And sometimes in grad programs too, they'll narrow you in, getting deeper into data science, or like MBA, they'll equip you to be making more of those strategy and bigger. So think of like breadth versus depth are kind of some of the ways people navigate career growth. Yeah.
Are any of you grad students? Are you all undergrads? Okay, I was just curious, maybe this would be a good question, Harry. As far as like, I kind of spoken to like 2 professors, for quant, in our field, and I don't know, with AI and stuff, do you just feel like there's gonna be a shift from like business analytics to like, economic forecasting, I don't know, I feel like.
Me, my like career counselor self over here. Honestly, there's a lot in flux, but for every job that's being eliminated by AI, there's a job that's being created by AI. And that's what we've seen, like this industry and this scope is not shrinking. It's just that you will be managing the technology. And there will be some things that will be, you won't, that's like certain computations, certain like skills that you won't need anymore because it's awesome. Like now we have the, a technology that can do that instead of me sitting here. But how are you applying strategy? How are you applying your understanding of business to make those decisions? That's not something that's going to be replicated through the technology. But we'll see.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just really quickly to add on that, if I had to bet, I would say that quant is probably one of the business concentrations, the least prone to being taken over by AI, because you're gonna learn those computing skills and those, like, you're gonna learn kind of the ins and outs of the theory and the background of what the analysis is doing. So rather than the analysis, new softwares or AI taking your job, it's just gonna be a new tool that you're gonna be able to use, and
In
you
your
might
job.
be able to know how to then develop new analyses because you have an understanding of how they work. If you don't have any understanding of how the analysis is done, sure, you can use the AI that knows how to do it, but there's nowhere for you to go from there. But if you know quant, you know how that thing was developed and what it's doing behind the scenes. That can give you intuition as to branching out in terms of other new algorithms that you could create.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know it's a wild time to be deciding on a career path right now. Yeah.
You kind of talked a lot about sorry, I'm looking at it, but in the green shirt, like more of the technical route. Could you talk about like the other paths that you can take as well?
Other than the technical route,
Like you kept saying, like, if you take the like technical route, like what's the other option?
so from what I've
Or
seen, like
computer science.
okay, any route you take in quant, you're gonna be pretty well technically equipped. I guess the non-technical route you could try to go into is more of that strategy side, what you're saying, which is still technical. But if you have an idea of the background of the quant curriculum, all of those classes, they do a really good job of making you really critically think. And some of them are pretty hard, so you're gonna learn how to become like an effective and intuitive thinker, and that could really help you for a strategy role. So maybe it's not really directly relating to programming or stats, but just because you've taken so many of those like analytical courses, you're gonna be very analytically minded and very prone to making smart strategical decisions. So that would be the more non-technical route, I would say. The more technical route is data science, data analysis, and analytics consulting.
Last summer, one of the people I work with went down the non-technical route, and a lot of what he did was just like hardcore like researching. And then he would analyze ad models and different applications and games, and for that, he would just directly be playing games. Like a part of his role was just like he'd be like, yeah, today I spent 8 hours playing like the Xbox and playing like XYZ game. And like taking pictures of the ads and then doing research on that in the background, like actually like searching up how different parts of that game worked or like, and that was more of the non-technical side. And I was actually like super fun. Like I had a week where I was like looking at Roblox for that company and I got to just like play Roblox.
This is where like once you get your first job in industry or your internship, you realize how many jobs exist that you just have no idea exist. Like there just is, it's really cool. It's exciting. Okay, I want to talk about Quack really quick. President, Brett, you both want to?
So we meet on Thursdays at 11. There's pizza. We usually have speakers. If we don't have speakers, we do workshops in Python and R and other languages, so you can kind of get a leg up for when you do take those classes. And we might be having a meeting.
We might have the previous president from Adrian last year.
Yeah, so the previous quant president might come and speak, and he works as a consultant, I think, right? Yeah, productivity consultant, so he can talk more about how quant is translated into the actual work that he does today. So yeah, come check us out, and we're in the silo.
Definitely.
Oh, you're in a silo.
Yeah,
Okay.
that might be, yeah, we kind of got a little unlucky with the room booking, and we're in the silo again this year.
No pressure. Fill this up.
Definitely just like if you guys are first years, just something to put on your resume at the moment. Just when you do get to the point of you're applying to internships or other things, you have something that you talk about. And then also, we will have board positions. coming
Yeah.
up next quarter.
What I was gonna say is that a lot of our board, are fourth years right now, so.
Oh,
we're gonna have
yeah.
Spots open, and we usually are like happy to take whatever, like board members for whatever role or whatever, benefit you can think of that you would be able to add to the club. I remember for us, like, there's usually a good amount of positions open and not maybe the most competition for it, so it's something that you can really devote yourself to getting with a good amount of confidence, and then also something more experience to put on a resume or job applications. So it's pretty fun too, I'll say, so.
Good
Yeah.
networking too. So if you find yourself saying, I thought that was interesting, I wanna know more, or I wanna take the next step to continue exploring, Quack would be the best place to do that. And also you can come in and chat with us at the Career Center, we can always help you process through all the information that you've learned in the concentration panel. I will email out the recordings of all of our concentration panels, so if you wanna revisit anything or if you have any questions, you'll find them there. And with that, have a wonderful rest of your day, thank you for being here, happy Halloween.